So Avatar The Last Airbender is the latest live action adaptation to come out of Netflix, which they've been pumping them out, y'all. They've had One Piece, Yu Yu Hakusho, and in the past, Death Note, which was pretty rough. But the One Piece live action adaptation was pretty great. And now here we are at Avatar The Last Airbender. So how is it, guys? Well, I'm thinking it's pretty good, y'all. Spoiler warning, if you haven't watched it, go watch, come back. I know, it's an adaptation of a show that came out years ago, but I have to say it. But we gotta talk some details about that, so stick around, let's talk about it, guys. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, guys, and let's talk about Avatar The Last Airbender Netflix, guys. This is based on the original property about an airbender named Aang, who comes back to save the fictional world of Avatar, full of benders who bend water, fire, and earth. And after being frozen for 100 years, Aang must embrace his duties as the Avatar, the bender of all four elements, and stop the Fire Nation from spreading their hateful ways and taking over the world. And guys, let's start out with things that are really good here, because it's so hard with adaptions. I mean, think it's tough here with Avatar because you're taking a TV show and adapting an already existing TV show, whereas Game of Thrones, you're adapting from a book. One Piece, you're adapting from the manga, even though there's an anime. Still, you're taking from a book. Here, you're taking from a TV series, and it's very tough to adapt a show that wasn't based on a book. So I think that's pretty tough, but I want to really applaud a lot of the acting, guys. Dallas Liu, man, as Zuko, so good. I think he is actually the standout of the show. No offense, Gordon Cormier, who was really good as Aang, by the way, but man, Dallas just steals the show sometimes as Zuko. He is so good, has that same ferociousness that Dante Basco had voicing the character back in the original series, and I think he is so good here, guys. Our star, our main man, Aang, who is actually awesome in the series. In the beginning, there's some moments of stiffness, and even throughout a lot of the episodes, there's some moments there where it's a little stiff, but honestly, I think he embodies Aang. I think he is Aang. I have an issue with Aang, though, and we'll get to that later in my dislikes, but I really do like Gordon as Aang. Really like the actress who plays Katara. I think she does a good job with what she's given, but man, it's just not quite Katara, and we'll get into that later as well. But Ian Owsley, another really great actor in the lineup. He does a great job as Sokka, and Paul Sun-Hyung Lee does great as well. We also have Daniel Dae Kim, who plays Ozai, which I didn't know how we feel about him showing up in the first season, but wow, Daniel Dae Kim is phenomenal in this role. I mean, he really takes Ozai and makes it his own while still giving us those evil moments and those really cunning moments of Ozai that we get in the original series. I really like the energy he's bringing here, and I'm really enjoying it so far. Guys, I'm loving how the bending looks. The bending was fantastic. I mean, the fire bending looked ferocious. The earth bending looked still, and in sometimes, some cases, it looked kind of stiff. In some shots, it didn't look as great, but I really liked the earth bending too. The water bending, the air bending, all of the bending for the most part looked great. While there were some shots that it looked a little weird, it looked great for the most part. I like action sequences and the action set pieces. I thought the world of Avatar also looked really cool. Visually, really great show. Unfortunately, Katara was just not great, and it's not the actress's fault. It is the way they wrote Katara. We'll get into a little bit of dislikes later, but I also really liked the last about 3 or 4 episodes. You know, the Blue Spirit episode, we see that in this season, and I really liked Dallas and Gordon on screen together. I thought they had a lot of chemistry and a very electrifying presence together. I liked them a lot. Really did remind me of the original meetup in the Blue Spirit episode in the original Avatar, and they just play the beats so well, where Avatar Aang is, you know, asking Zuko, maybe if we knew each other back in 100 years, we would be friends. I love how they incorporate this here as well. There are some really good things, and they do some great things with Jet, I think, to be honest with you. They actually blend Jet's storyline with the Mechanist to save a little time, but I like what they did there. They sort of made it a whodunit sort of episode where it's like, okay, who's the one causing the explosions? Could it be Jet? Could it be the Mechanist? I like what they do with that story and how they blend those two stories together very well. There are a couple episodes that I didn't quite like, but I really overall had a good time and thought they did the best with what they could. Let's move on to a couple of dislikes I had, because I definitely had some dislikes, and the first one I gotta start with, like I was saying earlier, is Katara. It's so unfortunate because Katara is one of my favorite characters in Avatar The Last Airbender, and I really loved the original performance of Katara. I liked that she was this headstrong, motherly type who, even though she was a warrior and she was fierce and headstrong, she still had this motherly, caring spirit for the gang that kept everybody afloat. And unfortunately, that's just not how they wrote her for the show. She kind of just blends into the background a lot of the time in the first couple of episodes, and really just feels like Sokka's little sister, and I don't like that for this character. She's such an integral part of the Avatar gang, and man, it just feels like this is not the Katara we know and love. So I unfortunately disappointed with Katara for the most part. Once we get into the Paku stuff, we start to see a little bit of Katara eking out, but I still even feel like that didn't get the light of day that it necessarily deserved. So Katara, probably the biggest blemish, and another character that unfortunately suffers is Suki. And this is due to the fact that Sokka's sexism is stripped away in this version. And that's a big hindrance on the Suki character, because their romance kind of just happens and there's not a lot of lessons for Sokka to learn. So it's so unfortunate. Stripping Sokka of the sexism is a little bit of a red flag here, because in the original, he learned such a big lesson with the Kyoshi warriors and them teaching him women can be strong warriors too. We don't get that here, and it does really take away. Speaking of Sokka, I want to move into Aang. One big unfortunate thing about this is Aang is not as adventurous. He's not as childish as he was at the beginning of Avatar The Last Airbender. That takes away a lot, because we see in the first episode of Avatar The Last Airbender in the animated version, he's going penguin sledding. He just wants to goof off in the beginning, and we don't see that here. And another big change they have for Aang. They change Aang's origin a little bit so that instead of running away after he figures out the big responsibility of being the Avatar, he goes up for some air and then gets trapped in a storm. And I'm like, yo, that is such a huge part to take away from Aang. Holy smokes, man. It was a big change. They also do this thing in the show where they did this in the animated series, but not as much. Aang has to go to like statues in order to like access and tap into the avatars, and I know that we did that with Roku's in the original, but we didn't do it with every avatar. We also see Kyoshi first here, then we see Roku, then we see Avatar Kurik. So we see 3 of the past avatars, but every single time Aang was to speak to an avatar, he's like in front of one of the statues, and I'm like, part of being the avatar was having that connection, being able to talk to them and speak to the previous avatars whenever. So it was a little weird and gimmicky, I thought, that they had Aang going to sit down in front of one of the statues, and that's the only way he could talk to them. Well, I'm nitpicking here. Also, King Boom. Did not like how they changed Boomy, man. Like, Boomy is Aang's last friend. Besides Appa and Momo, this is his last friend from that era of being an airbender 100 years ago. Boomy is supposed to be goofy with him. He's supposed to have fun with him. The challenges were to free Sokka and Katara. They changed that. It has nothing really to do with Sokka and Katara. And this time, Boomy is like salty with Aang and like has this grudge against him for being in the iceberg for 100 years. And I didn't like that. I felt like Boomy was such an integral part of Aang's journey, and they love one another. You know, they have so much love for each other, but here there's just like this degree of like saltiness that I didn't really like, so I didn't really love what they did with Boomy. However, there's a really great scene between Aang and Boomy where there's a rock over Boomy, there's a rock over Aang. Aang is holding them both up, and Boomy is like, you have to make a decision, because as the Avatar, you're gonna have to make a choice when one village is under attack and another is at the same time. You're gonna have to make a choice just like this. I did like that, but I didn't like the core changes to Boomy, so wasn't big on that. Now let's rewind a little bit and go back to episode 1. There's a lot more Monkey Atso, and Monkey Atso is great. Seriously, I really liked introducing the show and having us see Monkey Atso and really establishing that connection between him and Aang. I think it really, really works here, and I think the actor who played Monkey Atso was so good, so believable, so just believed so much in Aang and had so much charisma. Great actor choice, great character. I'm glad we got some more of him at the beginning. We see the airbender genocide and it's pretty ferocious, y'all. Like, we see airbenders getting burnt up, and throughout the show we see some firebenders like burning some people alive, y'all, and it's pretty gruesome. I like it. I think it adds a more mature edge to the series, and the material works for me, but it won't work for some. There are 2 episodes in the season that I will admit I did not like. That was the 2nd episode where they go to meet the Kyoshi warriors. It just was not a great episode. Suki was not great. Didn't really love the flow of the episode. Too many changes. Aang isn't as goofy as he should be, even though he does the air scooter thing. So episode 2 wasn't great. And then episode 5, they like basically blend together a bunch of different episodes in episode 5, and it just does not work. And they're pulling from season 2 and pulling from all these episodes and kind of blending them together in episode 5, and it's this weird, turns out to be this weird filler episode that is like, okay, these things happened in Avatar The Last Airbender, but this is like a greatest hits almost compilation in one episode. So not the best episode, but honestly, episode 6, 7, and 8 I really vibed with. I loved getting the blue spirit stuff back, and then 7 and 8 were good. Let's talk a little bit about Pakku, because he's good, and Princess Yue, and Mermaid Thunder. Aside from me shooting my shot, y'all, I do think she was really good as Princess Yue. I just think the wig was a little off, but I think she was really good in the role, really had that same sweet nature. Her and Sokka kind of rushed to the love again, just like it happened with Suki, so it's a little odd how they're rushing Sokka's love stories, but they just don't have as much time, which is weird because the original Avatar show, book 1, the episodes are like 20 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I know good and well y'all got 8 one-hour episodes. It's probably about the same runtime, but I digress. They changed some stuff with Zhao that I actually really like. They actually make him more of kind of a weasel this time, where he actually like works with Zuko at first, but then betrays him. I like that move as well, changing that character in that way. There are a lot of positive changes, and then there's quite a few not so good changes. Pakku and the Northern Water Tribe still have sexist tendencies, so they still believe that women should be healing, men should be the warriors. Katara proves him wrong, and this is where Katara shines. This is where this Katara finally feels like animated series Katara. But then they don't train with Pakku, because guess what, guys? They already knew going in that the Fire Nation would be invading the Northern Water Tribe. So that move right there caused the domino effect. We don't get Pakku's training. We don't get some other things down the line. It's just kind of like, we shouldn't have had Aang know that the Fire Nation was gonna attack the Northern Water Tribe. That was a ambush. And that was part of what made it so good, because it showed that the Fire Nation is cunning, but also that the Northern Water Tribe and Aang were enough to fend off the Fire Nation. So Aang fusing with the water, the ocean spirit, that was awesome, man. Looked really good in live action, in my opinion. I really like the look of the show. So there's a lot to like here, but then there's a lot to not like, guys. There's a lot that needs improvement. Some of the scripts are really not good either. All I'm saying is it's serviceable and a good adaptation. One that at least was decent enough that I would love a season 2. And I think if they do Book 2 Earth, they could really tighten some things up and correct some mistakes to make Book 2 Earth great, honestly, because I'm at a good, but not a great. So y'all gotta let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Listen, if I had to give a rating to Avatar The Last Airbender Netflix, I'm going to 7 out of 10. A C. It's average. There's some things I really like, some things I don't really like, some changes made, and I'm curious to hear what you guys know, especially people who are big fans of Avatar The Last Airbender. I think for some, they're really not gonna like it just due to the changes, due to things being different. They're really not gonna like it. I think this is gonna get mixed reactions, so I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments if you checked out the episodes, and hey, if you haven't, go back to the channel, y'all, and check out this review after you check out the episodes, and we'll see you next time on Geekly Goods.
Flip, flip,